The sound of Leon's car pulling into the driveway made my heart sink into my stomach. It was 3 a.m. Again, I had been laying awake for hours, my mind racing with dread about where he had been so late. When he finally came through the door, I was already standing in the living room waiting for him. "Where the hell have you been?" I demanded, trying and failing to keep my voice from shaking with anger and fear. Leon jumped a little, clearly not expecting me to be up. "Geez, Marla, you scared me. I was just out with the guys from work, that's all." His eyes avoided mine as he spoke. "Don't lie to me," I shouted, the hurt and rage boiling over. "I called Dave's wife earlier and she said he's been home since 10 p.m. Leon's face flushed red. "So what? A man can't go out without getting the third degree? We agreed you would stop this. After the bank threatening to foreclose because of your gambling, you swore you were done." Tears of frustration stung my eyes. It had taken everything I had to get Leon to go to Gamblers Anonymous meetings and get his life back on track 6 months ago. But the late nights and suspicious behavior had started up again recently. I just slipped up a little. "But I'm handling it," Leon said weakly. "Is that what you call racking up over $20,000 in debt behind my back?" I pulled out the stack of delinquency notices and letters from debt collectors that I had been receiving for weeks and threw them at his feet. "These arrived from 4 different credit card companies today. Were you just going to keep lying and spend us into complete financial ruin?" Leon's mouth hung open, clearly not knowing what to say. The fear and shame were plain on his face. After an agonizing minute of silence, he finally muttered, "I'm so sorry, Marla. I really did try to stop, but I just got pulled back in. It's a sickness, you know." I put my hands up, rage and heartbreak mixing together in a toxic swirl of emotion. "Don't give me that bullshit excuse. This is about making choices that involve risking our home, our daughter's future." The thought of how Leon's selfish actions could upend our little Lucy's life was like a kick to my gut. She was just 5 years old, innocent and caring and trusting. How could he do this to her? "You need to leave," I stated firmly, barely recognizing my own cold voice. "Get out of this house tonight, and don't come back until you've gotten real help to stop this. I can't have Lucy around this anymore." Leon opened his mouth to protest, but seemed to think better of it, his shoulders slumped in defeat. After grabbing his car keys, he turned to go without another word, shutting the door quietly behind him. In the deafening silence that followed, I felt my legs give way beneath me. I crumpled to the floor, wrapping my arms around myself as the sobs came in great heaving waves. My heart shattered into a million pieces thinking about how badly I had misjudged the man I had loved and trusted, the father of my child. How could Leon have been so weak and selfish? He was risking absolutely everything, our little family, our future, just to chase that stupid gambling high over and over again. The broken promises and blatant lies cut deepest of all. As I sat on that floor, crying in the dark stillness of our home, I tried to prepare myself for the long, difficult road ahead. Leon had shattered my heart and betrayed my trust in the worst way. But I couldn't dwell on that hurt forever. I had to protect Lucy now, no matter what it took. A righteous defiance began to burn inside me, stealing my resolve. If Leon wasn't going to man up and be the husband and father we needed, then I would have to take the reins myself. I would do whatever was necessary to get us out of this mess he created and make sure my little girl was taken care of, no matter how hard it got. That was my solemn vow as I wiped away the tears and rose to my feet, ready to face the challenges head-on. The weeks after Leon left were an exhausting juggling act. I was holding down my job as an executive assistant at the Willow Grove Family Crisis Center while also dealing with the aftermath of Leon's gambling meltdown. Credit card companies, debt collectors, and even our mortgage lender were relentlessly calling and sending letters demanding payment on the piles of debt he had recklessly accumulated. On top of that, I was now having to be both mom and dad to 5-year-old Lucy, making sure she was fed, bathed, and gotten to and from school every day while putting in my hours at the crisis center definitely kept me run ragged. More than once I arrived late to pick up Lucy, only to find her red-eyed from crying in the after-school room. "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy got stuck at work again," I said, hoisting her up with a tight hug. "Mrs. Franklin was just keeping you company until I could get here." Lucy pouted, her little brow furrowed. "You said you'd be here to have snacks with me this time." A lump rose in my throat, seeing the disappointment on her face that I had let her down once more. "I know, honey. I'm so sorry. But hey, How about we get McDonald's for dinner tonight? Lucy finally cracked a small smile at that, and I reminded myself to treasure these small moments of joy wherever I could find them. On one particularly rough evening, my best friend Jenna came over after getting off work. "You look like a ghost girl," she said, taking in my haggard appearance. "When's the last time you slept?" "Honestly, I can't even remember," I sighed, pushing aside a pile of past-due bills on the coffee table to make room for us to sit. "The debt collectors keep calling at all hours, and every time Lucy cries because I'm not around, it breaks my heart all over again." This is too much for one person to handle. Jenna put a supportive hand on my arm. "Marla, you've got to take care of yourself too, you know. Have you thought any more about getting a private investigator to look into Leon's activities?" I shook my head. "I just don't have the money for that, not with all these debts to try and dig out from." "Well, maybe I could help out with the cost," Jenna offered. "Getting some real evidence of what that dirtbag has been up to could be just what you need to get out from under this mess. And never underestimate a good girlfriend when she wants to help get some sweet, sweet revenge, too." She gave me a wry smile. I forced out a small laugh, cheered slightly knowing I had Jenna in my corner. A few days later, Lucy and I were eating dinner while some ridiculous baking competition show played on the TV. My phone rang and I saw it was Jenna calling. "Hello? Marla, you're not going to believe what my PI buddy found out." I quickly muted the TV so Lucy wouldn't hear, my stomach turning over anxiously. "What did he say?" "Well, for starters, it looks like Leon has been going to a couple different casinos outside the city every week. Belmark Downs and Riverside Grand are the two main ones." My mouth went dry imagining Leon shoving piles of our money right into the slots like a brainless zombie. I gripped the phone tightly. "Oh my God!" "That's not even the worst of it," Jenna continued. "He's also been siphoning money directly out of your bank accounts and taking out loans in your name to fund this. The PI got records showing over $50,000 has been drained from your joint savings and checking over the past 6 months. And that's on top of all the credit card debt already, too." It was as if the wind had been knocked clear out of me. I lowered myself into a chair, trying to suppress the fury and panic rising in my chest. How could he do this to us? To Lucy? I took a few steadying breaths. "Please tell me you have proof of all this." "Oh, don't you worry, girl. He's got bank statements, photos, the works. We can bury that son of a bitch, but good." I glanced over at Lucy, happily humming to herself while eating her chicken nuggets, blessedly unaware of the turmoil erupting in my life. Righteous anger surged through me like adrenaline. A fierce protectiveness over my daughter solidified my determination. "Well then, let's do it. Let's take that bastard down." A few days later, Jenna came over again with a large manila envelope. "Got those documents from the PI for you," she said grimly, handing it over. I took the stuffed envelope from her with trembling hands, almost afraid to open it and confront the full depths of Leon's betrayal. Steeling myself, I tore it open and began rifling through the contents. Bank statements, credit reports, surveillance photos of Leon at the casinos, and even some grainy video footage that must have been from ATM cameras at the bank. I felt nauseous looking at the bottomless pit of gambling transactions and ballooning interest charges spreading like a cancer throughout our finances. Jenna was right. It was even worse than I imagined. Leon had been ruthlessly pillaging every account and credit line in my name to feed his sick addiction over the past 6 months. "There's got to be over $80,000 in debt listed here," I said weakly, my legs feeling like jelly. Jenna slammed her hand down on the coffee table, startling me. "That worthless sack of crap! He's been lying and stealing from you like a parasite this whole time." Just then, Lucy came wandering in from her bedroom wearing her Paw Patrol pajamas, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Hey, Munchkin, did we wake you up?" Jenna asked in a gentler tone. Lucy shook her head and made her way over to me. "What's wrong, Mommy? Why are you mad?" I quickly tried to collect myself and plaster on a reassuring smile, shoving aside all the damning evidence spread out in front of me. "It's nothing, baby," I said, wrapping her up in a big hug and kissing the top of her head. "You just go ahead back to bed, and I'll come tuck you in soon, okay?" Lucy nodded obediently and toddled off back to her room, once again blissfully unaware of the turmoil threatening to unravel our little family. As soon as she was out of earshot, Jenna exploded again. "Can you believe this cockroach? He spent years betraying you, betraying his own freaking daughter. And for what? Losing all your money at those fleabag casinos again and again like some zombie with a death wish? I was trembling with rage, Jenna's words echoing the roiling storm of anger and hurt rampaging inside me. But I pushed it down, knowing my emotions couldn't be allowed to spiral out of control. Not with Lucy just down the hall. "You're absolutely right," I said, trying to keep my voice even and steady. "What Leon's done is beyond despicable. It's unforgivable." I began gathering up the documents and shoving them roughly back into the envelope. "But I'm not going to let his sickness destroy us. I've got to stay strong, for Lucy's sake if nothing else. I'm going to make things right." Jenna nodded firmly, her own eyes flashing with determination. "That low-life asshole has to pay big time for what he's put you and Lucy through. Let's bury him with all this proof of what a lying, cheating bastard he really is." "Don't worry," I said, gritting my teeth and cinching the envelope shut. "If he thinks he can wriggle out of taking responsibility for what he's done, he's sadly mistaken." My mind was already racing, plotting how to ensure Leon faced the consequences he deserved. This went far beyond lies and broken promises. He had stolen from me, stolen my family's financial security and future without a second thought. There would be no forgiveness for a betrayal that deep. As I gazed around at our cozy living room, my eyes landing on framed photos of happier times before Leon's destructive choices shattered everything, a cold feeling of grim acceptance spread through me. The life I thought I had was over. There was no going back from this. Justice would be brutal, implacable, and entirely of my own remaking. Leon was going to regret the day he ever took his loving, devoted wife for granted. A few days later, I finally worked up the nerve to call Leon and tell him to come over to the house. I needed to confront him with the mountain of evidence I now had proving his deceit. When he pulled up in his beat-up sedan, I was already waiting on the front porch, my arms crossed tightly. He got out of the car looking disheveled and hungover as usual. "Hey, baby, you said you wanted to talk?" he slurred out, barely able to meet my icy stare. I was sickened just looking at his pathetic, bloated face. Without a word, I shoved the overstuffed manila envelope into his chest, letting the weight of it nearly knock him off balance. "What the hell is this?" he grunted, struggling to grip the heavy load of documents. "Take a good look," I said through gritted teeth. "It's rock-solid proof of what a lying, degenerate piece of garbage you've been." Leon's eyes went wide as he began rifling through the bank statements, credit reports, and photos of him hunched over casino machines like a mindless zombie, the color drained from his face. "Baby, I can explain." "Explain what, you miserable snake?" I shouted, years of anger and hurt bubbling over. "How you've been stealing from me, from our daughter's future, while lying to my face over and over again?" Leon recoiled from the force of my rage, shrinking back like a whipped dog. "I never meant to hurt you guys," he muttered weakly. "I just got in too deep with the debts and had to keep trying to win it back." "You selfish bastard!" I cut him off. "Lucy is 5 years old and has had to watch her own father fritter away everything providing for her. Have you lost your damn mind?" Leon tried to reach out and touch my arm, but I smacked his hand away forcefully. "Don't you dare try and play the victim here," I growled. We stood in tense silence for a moment, Leon seemingly at a complete loss for words in the face of his shameful exposure. I took a few deep breaths, trying to regain control. "This is what's going to happen," I said in a low, measured tone that almost surprised me with its deadliness. "You are going to go check yourself into a real rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. For at least 6 months. No exceptions." Leon opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand to silence him. "You're also going to turn over every single cent you have in banks accounts, stocks, bonds, everything. It all goes into paying back what you stole me and our daughter, and you're getting a job the second you get out of rehab to pay back the rest." I leaned in close, barely able to stand the sight of his crestfallen face contorted in shame and fear. "If you do those things, if you make a full, genuine effort to get better and be a real man for once in your worthless life, then maybe, just maybe, I'll consider letting you try and be a part of Lucy's life again someday." Tears were streaming down Leon's cheeks, but I felt utterly unmoved. His weeping son act was far too little, far too late. "But so help me God, if you fail to do any of that, I will take you for everything you're worth. The only time you'll see our daughter is in court-approved visits, and I'll make sure the whole world knows what a pathetic, irresponsible, degenerate scumbag you've been this whole time." I stepped back, letting my ultimatum hang heavy in the tense air. Leon stared at me wide-eyed and broken. "Well?" I shouted, making him flinch. "What's it gonna be? Get clean and try to make amends? Or let the self-destruction continue until you hit rock bottom alone?" After an agonizing moment of silence, Leon gave a small, defeated nod. Okay, I'll do it. For real this time, I swear. Whatever you want, Marla." I eyed him warily, not allowing any shred of pity to break through my steely reserve. "We'll see. Now get off my property before I call the police and have you trespassed." Leon turned and began trudging back to his car, clutching the envelope of evidence to his chest like piece of his own shattered soul. As I watched him peel away from the curb, I whispered to myself with grim satisfaction, "That's just the opening salvo, asshole. You have no idea what kind of revenge is coming for you if you screw this up." After my confrontation with Leon, I thought I could finally start getting our lives back on track. I doubled down on my hours at the crisis center, working overtime as much as possible to start replenishing our drained savings. We had to drastically cut back on expenses. No more eating out, bargain grocery shopping, and lots of nights cuddled up watching movies on the couch instead of going out. But through it all, Lucy was a trooper. That little girl was my rock, all smiles and affection, despite our humbling new circumstances. She never complained about the cheap dinners or not having fancy toys anymore. Her sweet resilience was my driving force to persevere. Then about a month later, I got an alarming call from my mother. "Marla, are you all right, dear? Your father and I are so worried about you." "What are you talking about, Mom? I'm fine," I said, furrowing my brow in confusion. "Well, we just spoke to Leon last night and he told us about your condition," she said hesitantly. "Said you've been struggling with some sort of mental breakdown." My blood turned to ice in my veins. That stupid, vindictive son of a bitch. "He said what?" I growled through gritted teeth. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Marla," my mom continued. "We had no idea you were going through such a tough time. Leon said you've been irrational and delusional, lashing out at him for no good reason." I stopped listening, shaking with unbridled rage. That miserable worm was trying to turn my own family against me, smearing my name by painting himself as the victim, no doubt to wiggle out of the consequences I had promised him. When I hung up with my mom a few minutes later, I was angrier than I had ever been in my life. How dare he try and sabotage my relationships and make me look crazy? It was the ultimate insult on top of his already shameful betrayals. I spent the next couple days making calls and quickly realized Leon wasn't just lying to my parents. He had been spreading vicious rumors all across town, to our friends, his work buddies, even some of my coworkers at the crisis center. Telling everyone his scorned wife was having a mental breakdown and lashing out irrationally due to postpartum depression or some sort of psychosis. The stigmatizing lies seemingly knew no bounds. Tales of me being delusional, keeping Leonard from seeing Lucy, and even overblown stories about me threatening violence or self-harm if he didn't cede to my unhinged demands. I realized with horror that Leon was trying to completely destroy my credibility and reputation, probably hoping to turn everyone against me so that when I finally tried to take legal action, I'd look like the unstable liar. That was his endgame, to slither away like a coward without suffering any of the consequences for what he had done to our family. My fists clenched just thinking about it. One night, as I was watching Lucy play with her dolls after dinner, my sweet girl looked up at me innocently. "Mommy, is it true you're crazy and mean to Daddy?" My heart stopped in my chest. Of course the horrible rumors had even reached her youthful ears. I quickly went and knelt down next to her, half taking her little hands in mine. "No, baby? Of course not," I said, forcing a smile to mask my rage at Leon. "Those are just misunderstandings that some people are confused about. You know, Mommy would never be mean or lie, right?" Lucy nodded, seeming only partially convinced, but she was still so young and trusting. I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling tears starting in my eyes. "I'm so sorry you got caught up in this, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mommy loves you more than anything in the world." As I held her tiny body close, feeling her warmth and pure, unconditional love for her mother, an iron resolve solidified in the pit of my soul. There would be no more Miss Nice Girl, no more trying to take the high road or handle this nightmare situation with grace and poise. Leon had shattered that notion by lashing out with sabotage and lies. If that snake wanted to wallow in the mud and fight dirty to escape his sins, then so be it. I would engage in that battle without hesitation or restraint. It was time to stop playing defense and go on the attack. No more running or hiding. From now on, I would be the unrelenting force of justice and retribution that Leon's miserable life so clearly deserved. And if ruining him publicly was the only way to finally put this demon behind me and keep Lucy safe, then that was what I would do. Failure was no longer an option. By the time I was through with Leon, he would have no choice but face the consequences of every last sin he committed. No mercy. Only righteous karma from the woman he betrayed. Over the next few weeks, I went into overdrive plotting my counterattack against Leon's smear campaign. With Jenna's help, we combed through all the evidence and paperwork from the private investigator, highlighting anything that could potentially discredit Leon and destroy what little credibility he had left. I spent hours on the phone, working my connections from the crisis center to see what kinds of legal actions and social pressures we could realistically bring to bear. It turned out the nonprofit world had a lot of experience dealing with degenerate gamblers who financially ruined their families. More than a few lawyers and social workers were willing to assist my case pro bono once they heard the harrowing details. Evidence of Leon's debts, thefts, paper trails of his habitual gambling. I meticulously organized it all into an airtight case to prove what a reprehensible liar and criminal he had become. There would be no more chances for him to play the victim here. With the help of a sharp-tongued mother from the crisis center, who went through a similar hell with her ex-husband, I even compiled damaging testimonies from some of Leon's former gambling buddies at the local underground rooms. According to them, he had a vicious temper when on a bad streak, making racist and sexist tirades while drunkenly lashing out at staff. We had it all on record. The amount of indisputable evidence I was able to assemble of Leon's countless sins was staggering. He had lied, cheated, stole, and berated every goddamn person in his life for the sake of his selfish addiction. I felt disgust just looking at the paper trail of his continual transgressions. Most damningly, I obtained ironclad financial records from the private eye, clearly showing how Leon had been steadily looting our joint accounts and asset funds for 6 months leading up to our confrontation. He had stolen nearly $100,000 from me and Lucy to gamble away without a second thought. When Jenna came over one evening and I showed her the fully assembled dossier, she let out a low whistle. "Hoo, boy, I'd hate to be Leon when you finally unleash this nuclear bomb of truth on him," she said, flipping through the pages of debt statements, home appraisal devaluations, and witness excerpts detailing Leon's degenerate exploits. "That's the point," I said with grim satisfaction. "Once I blow the lid off just how big of a lying bastard he's been, not a single person in this city will take his side. He'll be radioactive, finished in the eyes of everyone from his work pals to his asshole bookie buddies." I pulled out a notebook where I had been listing potential dates, public venues, and possible attendee lists for the ideal scenario to detonate this truth bomb. See, the Summer Cancer Fundraiser Gala is coming up in a few weeks. That's where I can really maximize the exposure. Half the damn town will be there, from community leaders all the way down to their church groups and out-of-town donors. Jenna raised her eyebrows. "You sure you want to go nuclear in such a huge public arena, though? I know you're gunning to completely annihilate Leon's reputation, but doing it like that could set off a huge firestorm of drama, too." I shrugged, nodding firmly. "That's precisely why it has to be such a big stage. I want the fallout to be so catastrophic for Leon that he has zero chance of spinning it or escaping the blowback. He'll be left out in the cold to face the consequences. No more weaseling or conning his way out of trouble." I rifled through the dossier again, burning with determination. He had his chance to come clean and try salvaging our family after everything he's done, but instead that miserable snake chose to go scorched earth with vicious lies and deceit to try and turn our own friends and family against his wife and child. I slammed my fist on the table, making Jenna jump a little. Well, now he's going to burn in the fire he started. I'm going to shatter his pathetic facade forever in front of God and everybody. Once I humiliate him with the truth on that grand stage, it'll be the nail in his coffin socially and destroy any ability to lie or manipulate ever again. Jenna nodded slowly, seeming to understand the gravity of my plan. "The reckoning is going to be biblical, girlfriend. You've put in the work to bury that son of a bitch alive." "Exactly," I said grimly. "There will be no more hiding from karma's judgment for Leon. I'll make damn sure of that. A few weeks later, the big night of the summer cancer fundraiser gala arrived. Jenna and I spent hours making sure my appearance was perfectly put together, a classy black dress with modest heels, my makeup impeccably applied to convey strength and confidence. This was the moment I had been carefully preparing for. All the rage, hurt, and determination would finally coalesce into righteous retribution for Leon's unforgivable sins. "You look like one hot mama ready to burn it all down," Jenna said approvingly as we went over my materials one last time. I clutched the thick dossier of evidence to my chest, practically able to feel the force of karma contained within. "Don't worry, this will be a night that dirtbag never forgets." When we arrived at the fancy country club hosting the gala, the parking lot was unsurprisingly jam-packed with high-end luxury cars and limousines. All the social elite had turned out in full force. My mouth tightened into a grim line, realizing Leon was likely already inside, drinking away our money while hobnobbing with fellow scumbags and philanderers. But those willfully ignorant days of keeping up appearances were about to be obliterated. Tonight, I would pull back the curtain for everyone to see just what a venomous snake they had allowed into their midst. Inside, the lavish ballroom was indeed sprawling with wealth and local clout. Bucolic oil paintings adorning the vaulted ceilings, ornate gold trim accenting every corner, towering floral centerpieces amidst white-clothed dining tables. Leon, smarmy as ever in his discount suit, was circulating near the bar area, already clutching a glass of scotch. I sneered in disgust as I watched him shrink away like a kicked dog any time a friend or acquaintance pulled him aside for conversation, no doubt afraid they had also heard the ugly rumors. When he spotted me enter the ballroom, his face visibly paled and he quickly tried to look away, pretending not to have seen me. Pathetic weakling. As the opening remarks and fundraising speeches dragged on, I gripped the file folder tightly under the table, anticipation and adrenaline coursing through me. My moment was rapidly approaching. Finally, the master of ceremonies took the podium to kick off the evening's live auction component. Midway through his introduction, I seized my opportunity. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," I called out over the low murmuring of the crowd, striding up towards the stage with purpose. Leon's eyes went wide with panic, realizing too late what was happening. Jenna gave me an approving nod and wink from her table nearby. "Sorry, folks, but before we bid on prizes tonight, I have an important matter to address," I announced clearly, unsmiling. "It's about one of our longtime attending members here and a dark double life he's been living. A life absolutely riddled with lies, criminal deceit, and reprehensible sins against his own wife and child." The room immediately erupted into hushed murmurs and awkward shifting in seats. Leon shrank back in his chair, face reddening. "I'm talking about you, Leon Mitchell," I proclaimed, leveling my gaze directly at him like a laser. "Everything you've done to betray our family and everyone else who ever cared about you is finally going to be exposed for all to see." Heart-pounding, I held up the overstuffed manila file for all to see. In my hands, I hold every shred of ironclad proof documenting your degenerate gambling addiction, the trail of debt and financial ruin you've caused our household, and the myriad ways you've lied, cheated, and discredited me in an effort to escape the rightful consequences. I took a breath, then began reading excerpts from the dispassionate factual reports in a clear, unapologetic tone. Bank statements of Mr. Mitchell withdrawing over $12,000 at a time from ATMs located inside Riverside Grand Casino. Photos of Mr. Mitchell entering Belmark Downs Casino no less than 37 times over a span of 3 months. Receipts of payment for delinquent credit lines opened illegally by Mr. Mitchell, using his wife's name and social security number, totaling over $100,000 in fraud. Leon had his head in his hands, hunched over amid a chorus of shocked gasps and mutterings permeating the ballroom. By now, every eye was locked on the unbelievable spectacle unfolding before them. I summoned the full force of rage and disgust welling inside me. This man, a degenerate gambling addict without a single shred of honor or decency, has been conning and manipulating all of you for quite some time now. And rest assured, the disgusting truth I'm about to lay bare is merely the ugly tip of the iceberg. Taking a breath, I steadied myself. Then I detonated the thermonuclear truth bomb. Are you all aware, for instance, of the numerous racist and sexist tirades Leon is known for on his routine benders? And like that, the first bombshell landed. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. The days and weeks after that fateful gala passed by in a bit of a whirlwind. My public excoriation of Leon's sordid misdeeds and repugnant behavior had set off shockwaves reverberating across our community. Just as I had hoped, the sheer volume of cold, hard evidence I provided, combined with the respected social setting in which I delivered it, left Leon with zero credibility to try and deny or excuse what a depraved degenerate he had become. Friends and acquaintances who once embraced Leon suddenly wanted nothing to do with him. He was quickly fired from his corporate management job once my damning dossier made the rounds with leadership. Even some of his seedy gambling cohorts at the underground rooms wanted to distance themselves from the PR nightmare he had become. Watching Leon's life and reputation crumble in real time was immensely satisfying, a warranted obliteration after his myriad betrayals of trust. Seeing him finally face the disastrous consequences of his own disgusting choices provided a sense of karmic catharsis. It wasn't just social disgrace and pariah status he earned either. With the rock-solid proof I provided of his litany of financial crimes and domestic violations, law enforcement also fast-tracked charges against him on numerous fronts. One early morning a few weeks later, SWAT officers showed up pounding on his squalid apartment door to arrest him for outstanding warrants. The look of abject terror on Leon's face as they wrenched his arms behind his back and shoved him against the wall was priceless. For once, the sad sack realized there would be no more wiggling out of trouble or spinning sob stories to skirt accountability. He ultimately agreed to a plea deal, receiving a harsh 3-year sentence, during which time I have an ironclad permanent restraining order against him legally enforced. In exchange for his conviction, he was forced to liquidate every penny of his remaining assets, brokerage funds, and foreclosed properties to pay back the full $220,000 in marital assets he squandered gambling, plus interest and penalties. I even sued to ensure he kept paying out of his earned wages for the next decade until the debts were repaid to the last penny. Despite the exorbitant financial cost Leon was court-ordered to cover, it still didn't put much of a dent in my rapidly rebuilding savings and investment portfolio. Thanks to a surprisingly lucrative wrongful life lawsuit settlement my attorney managed to secure from one of the scuzzy casino operators Leon frequented most often, I once again had a healthy nest egg firmly in place for Lucy's future college plans and more. Speaking of Lucy, she had been my bedrock throughout this entire saga. While the legal maelstrom and social typhoon raged all around us, I made every effort to insulate my sweet girl from as much turmoil as possible. I didn't want the vicious karma reprisals of her father's sick misdeeds robbing her of the innocent childhood she deserved. There were undoubtedly some unavoidable disruptions and difficult conversations to navigate as the sordid truths about Leon's lies and betrayals kept unfolding. However, Lucy seemed to innately understand that her mommy was merely doing whatever was necessary to clean up an unhealthy situation, a messy but altruistic process ultimately intended to preserve and protect the family she held most dear. Each night as we cuddled up watching one of her favorite movies, feeling her small body snuggled warmly beside me, I would shudder in relief, knowing all my scorched earth efforts had ensured Lucy's physical and emotional sanctity remained completely intact. Leon would no longer be able to pollute her world ever again. And now the storm had finally passed. With fresh financial stability and a radiantly bright future ahead of us, I could turn my attention to constructive new endeavors. In particular, I felt called to devote myself to helping other families shattered by gambling addictions, just as the crisis center counselors had assisted me. Drawing from my own lived experiences of heartbreak, deception, and the catharsis of confronting those traumas head-on, I knew I could provide invaluable empathy and guidance for others struggling to extract themselves from similar toxic situations. And perhaps most importantly, I could instill the righteousness of relentless self-preservation that had empowered me to decimate Leon's wicked vices without hesitation or mercy. It would be the ultimate cosmic role reversal, harnessing the hard-won forces of karma that had once devastated me, using them as a beacon of hope for others drowning in their own private hells. A new crusade fueled by the life lessons of ruthlessly burning my hubris to ashes and rising like a fiery phoenix from the smoldering remains. As I shared the first details of my vision with the executive director of the crisis center, the older woman smiled warmly and placed a hand over mine. "My dear, you have such a powerful story to share. The transformation from victimized wife to avenging angel of truth and moral fortitude, she said. I believe you're going to end up inspiring countless people with your bravery and perseverance. They don't yet know the half of it, I thought to myself with a confident smirk. If the old me could survive the crucible of betrayal and still emerge triumphant through sheer force of will, then no injustice or familial wrong would ever intimidate me again. Bring on the world's sicknesses. I would show them all the true healing power of uncompromising justice.